Hello and welcome to another section in the second unit of this course. Today we'll be looking at 2.4, preparing for the interview. And remember, we selected the data scientist role, and that's what we'll be focusing on from this point onwards in the course. A quick recap. We saw in the last section that we'll follow this 5-layered approach where we look at the trend in the market, the hype, the type of company, the maturity of the company, the role that we're targeting, and then matching our traits to that role. So let's say from the perspective of a data scientist role that we're targeting now, we've gone ahead and researched the market and the company and the role, and we have some idea. We've started to look at what technologies we want to go into, conventional or traditional data science. We want to go with the company that's a producer slash consumer in the middle bucket. We want to go for a data scientist role. Then from a company and role perspective, we've also ticked and highlighted some aspects that are important to us. We know the type, analytical maturity of some companies that we've shortlisted, their work culture and work-life balance, growth potential, salary comparisons. We've done this by looking at reports on the web and looking at LinkedIn and reviews. We also are aware of what skills and experience and qualification training are required for this role at those companies, and then whether it gives a roadmap for career development and growth to us. We've also gone ahead and looked at our traits to evaluate ourselves, and we see that we have attention to detail, some kind of relevant academic background and some certifications, some skill set but very little work experience, and this is a gap. We are interested in remuneration, we want work-life balance, we want to have a role that's going to be straddling or covering a lot of different areas because we're interested in business and data and reporting and even experimentation. This is very well suited to a data scientist role, which is good. And we've gone ahead and made a list of the gaps and weaknesses that we have in our resume and what training needs we have. And also personal and professional values, ethos, what is important to us as a person, and the shortlisted companies, for instance, in this hypothetical example, let's assume aligns with our values. Now let's make a concrete roadmap using the concept that we saw a few slides ago. So in terms of goals, let's say that our midterm goal is that we want to become a data scientist at an end user org. And the long-term goal is that we will move from the end user to a producer slash consumer. In order to meet the midterm and the long term, we have a short-term need, which is very pressing, that we need to learn Python and machine learning basics. So we know there are relevant courses and micro degrees. We identify a Python course, perhaps on well-known platforms that offer such courses like Udemy or EDX or Coursera, etc., or Khan Academy. And then some micro degree in machine learning as well, which is going to give us a basic to intermediate level of expertise and knowledge and application ability through projects and assignments and courseworks. Of course, at this point, you will not have the work experience, but we'll come to that. Before then, we need to brush up our CV, highlight the experience that we have, which is transferable to a data scientist role. Perhaps you used to report to the analytics team, or you used to report to the executive committee with business charts, Excel sheets, and some PowerPoint presentations. Perhaps you're very good at creating business narratives, or you understand business problems because you have expertise in a particular industry. Any of these skills that are transferable to data science, you mention those in your CV. When we come to the slides about creating our CVs in a moment, we will see this in more detail. Definitely mention the courses and micro degrees that you've identified and have embarked upon, and you familiarize yourself and start working on projects from GitHub and Kaggle, etc., to build up your expertise and skill. And then, as I said, once you've done these three things, you are short of some kind of a work experience, so you target an internship or perhaps an attachment for work experience for a few weeks at an AI company if you can. This can come through your network or from your university or from your current company's analytics department. It could also be a company that's just using data-driven insights, using products or services through dashboards, and or if they're more sophisticated, it could be some statistical models that are deployed in production. And this can become a jumping board for you to your first job as a data scientist, because with the right kind of training that you've done and the project experience, moving into an internship with, let's say, all the gaps filled to some degree, you will have the on-the-job experience as well to have a better chance of passing an interview as a data scientist after that. How do you bring those vacancies and job opportunities so that you can start interviewing? Is by going to workshops online and meetups regionally, locally, or globally online. Follow the right kind of profiles on LinkedIn, the companies, connect with people from there, attend in-person seminars and conferences, etc. And when you meet with the people, you will be in a better place to actually find someone who can be a mentor for you. And again, this should be tracked and monitored at all times, because you will need to revise and update this plan as you start to move through and execute it. So how do we apply for a job then? Let's say you found a vacancy at a relevant company that's hiring. You get to know the company first, as we've already said. You know their portfolio, their profile, their products and services. Do they have a job description? Perhaps they don't, because in quite a few regions, the market moves so fast that job descriptions are not even written, or by the time they're written, the requirement has changed, so the job description isn't relevant anymore or isn't accurate. But in most cases, you should have a job description which gives you an idea of the requirements and the needs of the job. If you check the company's portfolio and their profile, you might find some other people in those roles. From their profiles, you might be able to understand what the requirements could be. But if you have nothing and you really find nothing on this, then you should prepare a question and ask them in the interview when you do talk to them. Also, as I've said before, you go to third-party sites like Glassdoor or other platforms to find some salary-related comparisons and data and reviews of past employees and current employees to gather quite a good understanding of the company. Then you focus on your CV, which is you presenting yourself in the first instance to this company. Always create something that's visually appealing on platforms such as Canva. Word documents are a thing of the past, and you should avoid a black and white CV. Just try to keep it elegant and professional. One color, one or two types of font faces at most. Use 2 columns so that you can actually keep the CV to a single page. At most, you should have 2 sides of A4 paper. The structure of the CV should be that you have your name at the top, and this is underpinned by your career summary. There's no need for a heading to say this is a summary. 5 or 6 bullet points or 1 paragraph under your name, that's 3 or 4 lines max, is going to give anyone who's reading the impression that this is a summary of your career. This summary should be such that whoever reads it should no longer need to read the entirety of your CV. Just a quick glance would allow them to make up their mind whether they're going to call you for an interview. So really work on your CV. In the left column of the 2 columns, on both pages or both sides of the paper, the A4 paper, you will have 2 columns. The left column, a much narrower column, and the one on the right will be a bit broader. Let's say that you have a 30% width in the left column and 70 on the right. You keep your contact details and your skills, your technical skills, perhaps courses that you've done. If you have done quite a few courses, you might not be able to put all of them under education in the right column section, which we'll come to in a bit. You can put the languages that you speak, interests, and anything else. The right column is your core CV. where you put your education, your industry, your academic experience. You should put it by company and by your position and role. Always mention your month and year, start date and end date. And with education, you don't really need to go into college or school detail. Degrees should be enough, unless you're already a student and doing your first degree, or you're at college, which is when you should be giving detail on your school and your college. Some examples. So that's my CV from 5 years ago. You can see my name at the top with 3 or 4 lines of my career summary. The left column, which is much narrower, contact details and courses and interests and skills, etc. In the right column, you can see industry experience and education, etc. Then I updated it and changed it quite a bit 3 or 4 years ago. And then from last year, this is my CV. It's become a bit narrower, changed, but largely the same kind of structure that I've explained to you. So the third stage in the application for a job is then writing a cover letter. Generally, I would say that it's not needed anymore, especially if you've got your career summary at the top of your CV. But some companies for particular vacancies might explicitly ask you to write a cover letter, in which case you should write one. Put in this cover letter all of the company research that we mentioned a couple of slides ago. So you need to be presenting, you need to be thinking like this. You're presenting your skills and capabilities to this company. You know what this company is about, what they're after, and what they're looking for. Match your traits to this research that you've done. Put it in front of them in the cover letter, very succinctly in a couple of paragraphs, and make it very clear for them what it is that you bring to them, bring to the table if they select you and give you the job. And this brings us to the actual topic of this section, preparing for the interview. You need to do your homework very well once you've got the invite for the interview. And we will come to how this research for the interview preparation will look in the next slides. But in the very first instance, you need to prepare how you're going to be talking about yourself. And I start with leadership. There are quite a few leadership traits that we can look at, but I've put a few down. You can look at them, if you're someone who's in a managing position, develop talent that reports to you. People who are reporting to you, look at their talents and identify their strengths and weaknesses and develop them so that they can do better in their career, help them with their career progression. Take action rather than procrastinate. Dive deeper for results. Always maintain integrity. Think big. Own the work that you're delivering. Own the mistakes. Lead the team from the front. Keep it very simple. Always learn. Be curious, and so on and so forth. And these leadership traits are very important as a data scientist, because a lot of the times the direction will come from the data scientist. The team will look at them, look up to the data scientist to give direction. For instance, in domain and data questions, or a particular challenge in developing a proof of concept, engaging the business stakeholder, when to escalate to the customer, to the C-suite, to the sponsor of the project, etc. In terms of technical skills, of course, we need to know the data science fundamentals. We need to have an understanding of the tools and the software. In general, communication is key. The body language and confidence that we exude as we meet with them in the interview. We need to know the domain and the industry if we actually have experience in one industry, and this could be an industry that you were working in before you transitioned to becoming a data scientist. It helps if you know example use cases and applications of data science and AI to your industry, and you perhaps had experience as an end user of those products and services. This helps to strike conversations in the interview and show your knowledge and expertise. Of course, as we've said multiple times, know the company. You can also prepare general problem solving examples and their answers just to be ready. And also think of examples from your background and your experience using the STAR method, the situation, task, action, and result. So we'll come to this in the next slides as well. Let's say that you've done your research and these are the kind of points that you've noted down. What is their purpose, their mission or vision? Who are their customers? Who are their competitors? What products and services they're offering? How many cities or countries are they present in? How many offices do they have? Which offices will you be working in? Or the vacancy that you've applied for, which office is it based in? This helps you to have logistics and an understanding of how your daily commute will go, perhaps, or it could be for many different reasons, really. And it's not a high priority question, but it's a good enough question for you to understand, especially if you can from the job description. Do they have work-life balance? What's their culture? And then after all of this research, what is it that you like about them? If you answer these questions for yourself before the interview, it will help your conversation and the way that you engage with them a lot. After your research, you might still have some questions that you couldn't find the answers for. These are the questions you should note down for when you talk with them and are invited to ask questions in the interview. The next thing you should know is who is interviewing you. To connect well with your interviewers, you must check their profiles and their expertise areas and their journeys and what roles are they currently fulfilling in the organization. You can find out the names and job titles and designations of these people. If you haven't been given this information, you can reach out to the human resources or the person who is the liaison or point of contact from the organization dealing with you or communicating with you to organize and schedule the interview. Once you have this information, you check the profiles on LinkedIn, etc. You can check the company website if they're part of the leadership. More often than not, you will find their names and photos on the website. You can also check their previous roles at this company or even before then, and you can see how long they've worked there. This helps you to understand how much they'll know about the organization, what kind of questions you can ask them, and it just helps the general conversation flow. It will help with finding common ground so you can build a rapport with them. You can break the ice when at the beginning of the interview you can mention perhaps an overlap in interests that you saw on their LinkedIn profile that you also have. Perhaps you have a similar background or a skill set, or you worked in the same industry before, or you worked at the same organization before, etc. But remember to keep this professional. You should always stay within the bounds of professional decency and not mention something that is perhaps from their social media feed or something that would be deemed as personal and make them uncomfortable. The next thing that we'll need to do is then list your strengths and experience, as we mentioned on the general slide before. You create a concrete list of answers with examples to questions like, what's the most difficult project you were on? What's the best achievement to date in your career? And so on and so forth. You should look for requirements of the role and answer how you suit them and how you match with these requirements. And this should be exemplified by your career and your past experience. Think of material and examples that are not in your CV or in your cover letter or in your LinkedIn profile. This is information that they will not know about you because it's not on any of the material that they have seen or been given. You can structure it by listing out your professional strengths in line with the job needs, and you can use the STAR method there. Be concise and succinct and clear when communicating during the interview, because STAR method is situation, task, action, and result. So you take an example, you explain the situation in a couple of lines, you tell them what the task was, then you could tell them what actions you took, and then you tell them what results it produced. And STAR method allows us to keep succinct and concise without going on and on about an example, communicating the essence of the example to prove our suitability. The second list you can make is your personal strengths list. You can also list down some examples from your personality or even mission in life and align that with the company values. Perhaps one of the values of the company is integrity, and you can exemplify your practice, the significance you attribute to integrity and the way that you apply it in your professional career. Be very careful that you do not divulge any confidential information while doing so. Keep it generic without naming any organizations or people, and keep the example to the extent that is needed to convey the point. A next list you can create an answer or fill in with answers is problem solving and common questions that interviewers ask. This could be, for instance, why did you apply for this job? What's your biggest strength? What's your biggest weakness? Or what's been the most difficult problem you had to solve in your career? Or do you work best individually or as part of a team? And why should we give you this job? And many more. Such questions can be quite tricky to answer on the spot, so it's always a good idea to think about answers for these kind of common questions and write those down, just so that you have some practice and you have some solid examples from your career where you can provide on the spot. They can be more technical or relevant to the role as well, not just very generic questions, but you could also have very often repeating common questions for a data scientist role. For instance, what's your approach to developing a data-driven solution or a proof of concept prototype? How do you monitor models in production that are experiencing performance decay or drift? What's your approach to data science modeling? And so on and so forth. You should always use the STAR method if you can. Use the example, explain the situation, the task at hand, the actions you took, the results you got, and keep your answers interesting and engaging. And finally, your list of questions for them. This is a very, very important part of the interview. Typically, the interview will be formatted in a way that after initial introductions, there's a question and answer session where they're assessing your knowledge and skill set and ability. You're exemplifying your answers with past experience and concretely giving them succinct proofs. And then the interview is going to close the interview, but just before they close, they'll hand over to you and ask you if you have any questions of them about the organization or the role or anything. So have a list of prioritized questions. Depending on the time that has been given to you, you can decide how many of those questions you should ask, and you can just start from the top of your prioritized list. If you have maybe 1 or 2 minutes, you just ask the first question. If they're very short and give a curt answer, you can move to the second question. If they're a bit expressive and it takes up the minute or two and you come to the end of the interview, then sometimes you will be given this option when they will say that they're happy to answer questions by email, and you can write to them through the human resources point of contact. So let's see what kind of questions you could ask. As I said, it's very important to ask questions because this is your chance to assess them. So questions like, what does success look like for this role? How can I succeed as a data scientist if I'm selected? What's the organizational structure? Where does this role fit? Do you have a center of excellence? Do you have a separate unit under a CAIO or a CDO? This helps you to understand what's the size of the team, who will you report to. Generally, the hiring manager is going to be interviewing you as well as others, so you will know this because they will tell you. But if they don't, you can ask as well. What, in your opinion, would be a successful first month or 3 months or year for someone selected in this role? This is a good question to ask different interviewers if you have multiple stages, because it will give you an idea of what the organization is doing and what their perception of the organization is, or what their role is dealing with, and it will give you different perspectives on the same thing, so you get a complete picture by putting the multiple answers together that you've gotten from multiple interviewers. And then what is a typical workday on the job, and so on and so forth. So I hope that this session has given you a deeper understanding. See you in the next section, and then we'll close the unit together. Thank you, and bye-bye.